Today's guest is Guido Di Salle, a fine art photographer known for his portraits and distinctive style. Guido's images are cinematic in tone, inspired by fashion and guided by storytelling. His work often explores intimacy, vulnerability, and identity, creating photographs that feel like captured moments from a movie. Over the years, his photography has been published internationally and exhibited around the world, connecting with audiences and collectors who recognize both the powerful art and the honesty in his work. When NFTs began to emerge as a new medium for art, Guido was one of the early adopters in photography to utilize burn and redeem mechanics, and he did it successfully. His Editions by Guido collection has traded over 1,457 ETH, placing it among the top 10 highest volume traded photography collections of all time. In this conversation, we explore his journey as an artist, his thoughts on vulnerability and creativity, his pivot into NFTs, and what it means to keep pushing the boundaries of photography while staying true to your own vision. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Guido Di Salle. Chaos earlier.
Nah, no stress. It's all good. Technology, oddly enough, is not my thing either. So here
Dude,
we
it's
are.
just, yeah, especially with like all this new stuff with like the podcasting. It's like the first one I did, the sound got botched. Like I could only get my track working. The second one I did, we did it on Safari and the whole
Right.
thing got like, so it's just, yeah,
No worries.
we're getting there, dude.
Yeah. No, this is a great initiative that you got going on, man. I appreciate it as well. On behalf
Yeah.
of all artists, like it's great, right? Getting to know
Yeah, man.
people.
I think it's important for us to just keep the conversation in. Like, I think the most important thing for us is like to control the narrative. Because if
Correct.
we don't, like the corporations come in and then they control it.
Yeah. And we've seen that different iterations and to different degrees. We've seen people come in and sort of spin their own ideas of what the space is. And, we've been here and just look, there's people that have been there earlier than us, obviously, right? But we've been here since at least myself, early 2021. I think approximately you're the same, right?
Same.
And
Yep.
so we've seen the way it's sort of evolved and changed and the people that have come and gone and tried to sort of, as we say, cash grabs and sort of get their claws into it. So no, appreciate it. I think it's good that we chat and it's important to keep the narrative up, as you said.
Yeah, man. I think it's extremely important, especially right now when it's kind of like, it's a weird market where it could come back, it might not. It's going, so it's like we should just stay on top of it. It's fun, man. Like I'm actually enjoying this. It's a good time.
Awesome, man.
All right. So good to have you on the show, GM.
Thank you,
Guido,
GM.
yeah, it's been a long time coming. I'm glad to have you on the show. I love your work. Uh,
Appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah, man, a big fan. Been following it for a while.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to have you on to just kind of like not only tell your story like within like Web3 and like your journey with that, but I really kind of actually just like I don't know much about the beginning of your photography, and I actually just like I want to learn from like how you got involved, the very beginning. So if we want to start, when did you get involved with photography, and kind of like what made you get involved?
Yeah, thanks. First off, foremost, thanks for having me on here, John. Really appreciate it, and thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, thank you,
Um,
man.
Photography is, it's been a lifelong sort of interest. I'll call it an interest because it started just as an interest as far back as I can remember. You are probably familiar with my PFP, the picture that I use on X, which is me as a boy holding that Polaroid camera, my father taking a picture of me. And so I'd say that without sounding cliche, like that's really when my interest in photography started. Like that photo being taken, like I don't know what year it was, but it was probably likely around the year 1983 or so, 82 or 83, anyways. Um, I think sparked an interest generally in image making, and then being a young boy and growing up in a household predominantly of women. My mom and I had two older sisters, which had um, a very profound sort of impact on my upbringing because they were into fashion and the fashion magazines, and a lot of these magazines were being left around the house. And so as a young boy, bored and looking for things to do, I would just flip through the magazines, and then fashion photography became a real sort of focal point of my interest in terms of the visual journey. And I can remember you know um, ripping out pages of black and whites shot by Annie Leibovitz or Lindbergh or Mario Testino and Helmut Newton, all the greats, and basically just taping them to my wall. And then by the time I was like 12 or 13, I had all these images taped to my wall of all these fashion models and all these cool fashion editorials. And so I'd say that the actual interest in the visual, image making part of it started super young. Um, I think that it became more of an interest in photography per se as I started my hairdressing career. When I was 18, um, I um, I became a hairdresser. I went to school for hairdressing, and then I was working part time in a salon as well. Um, and back then, it would have been I'm 46 now, so back then, 1998, 97, 98, it was a big thing in the hairdressing world to have these, they're called hair competitions, but really what they are is, you prepare a model's hair a certain way, and they're very usually like avant-garde and obscure kind of colors and hair designs. It was the 90s, so hair was
Yep.
really interesting back then. But you would take a picture of the model, you do the hair, you take a picture, and then you would submit the picture to a panel, and they would judge, and you'd win an award. And I didn't have the money back then for like a top photographer to shoot it, and I understood photography because I was always, again, playing with cameras, and it was something that interested me. So at like 18, I picked up a camera and I shot a couple models whose hair I, you know dyed pink or red or whatever it was, and cut them the baby bangs. And so that was my first real foray into like taking a picture. And the pictures were like just god awful. They were I didn't really have a clue as to, how to master it. But
Right.
I'd say that was the moment where it was like, I enjoy taking pictures, and then it evolved from there. And then it wasn't until probably 2012, 2013 that I really decided to like to dive in and start shooting some stuff. And that's, I think, when I took it more seriously, when I was in my early 30s.
When you picked up the first camera, was it your camera, and did you own that camera? Did you borrow it from someone?
It was, well, I mean, the first camera would have been that Polaroid camera
The
in
one
the
that your dad
picture,
gave you?
but the second camera I picked up was, also my father's, which was a Minolta,
Okay.
that I still have. It was a Minolta Maxim 7000 autofocus, and I still have that camera as a keepsake.
Is that the one you were shooting the hair with?
Yes, those early ones, that's exactly what I shot, and I didn't have the money for a lens, so I remember walking around the corner and, renting a lens. Like, there was a little photography shop, and so I rented like like, I don't know what it was, a 2870 or I don't know, a 3080 or whatever it was at the
Yeah.
time. I didn't know much about, zooms and focal points and stuff. But I rented one because I needed it, because all I had on my camera was like a 35 mil fixed lens, and it wasn't enough for what I needed.
That's funny. And
Yeah.
um did you have any idea that, like, during that session when you were doing the hair, like, did you have any idea what it was gonna turn into?
No, no, I did it a few times. I never won a hairdressing award, by the way. Thought I should throw that in. Um, but then, my career moved on as a hairdresser, and I moved to a bigger city. I moved to Toronto, where I owned a salon with some partners, and I was working a lot on hair for fashion shows. I was doing a lot of like hair for editorial shoots and fashion shows, and I was also working, um, here and there with an agency doing hair for on set, so television commercials and productions and that kind of thing. And so I was exposed to like this sort of photography from a production editorial perspective for a while. And I do remember sort of watching and thinking to myself often, like, I can do this. Like, this isn't, when I would see the finished product, I would look at the pictures and think to myself, well, this isn't how I would have shot it, or this isn't how I would have liked it to look. But again, I wasn't the photographer. And so I decided to pick up a camera and just try shooting stuff that wasn't hair centric, that was more, I'd call it editorial, fashion, lifestyle centric, and I just went from there.
That's cool. And so when did you move fully into, like, actually, like, considering this is your profession?
That's a great question. Um, there was a hiatus, probably around 2017, um, where I decided to hang the camera up for a little bit and actually focused on physical painting, abstract and collage art.
Oh, cool.
And, yeah, I sold a few of those. I was doing all right with it. It was a growing sort of business for me, just word of mouth, a lot of clients in the salon like my work and, would tell a friend and they would order one and I do a commission. Um,
Were you hanging them in the salon too?
no, I hung some of my photography in the salon, but never, as far as, at least I don't think so. Never any of my collages or abstract paintings. I found collage more abstract, but both collage and abstract. I found it to be very therapeutic for me. My father was diagnosed with cancer, and he fought cancer for about not even a year, but about 8 months. And during that time specifically, it was like more so than the photography, for whatever reason, it was just like an outlet. It was a way for me to like make super beautiful things, color. It was very dark. It was a dark period. I was going through a lot of life changes. And so using these bright colors and, these abstract shapes and bringing it together and creating these, what I felt were beautiful. And let me actually preface that with like everything that I do, my photography, my art, collage, abstract, AI, whatever it is, it's stuff that I like. I make stuff first and foremost for myself. And that's where it comes from, right?
Right.
And so it was therapeutic. It was something that sort of, um, I guess you could say, I found some comfort in creating that stuff. And then, I COVID hit, and then I had to walk away from my salon because my father had passed away. My mother, is elderly and she's on immunosuppressants, and I was caring for her. The doctor told me basically, look, like we don't know anything about this disease, COVID, and if your mom gets it, it's going to be really bad because she's already on immunosuppressants. And so I had to
Mhm.
make a decision. Walked away from the salon, and I was like jobless, unemployed. I had no money to my name. That's the truth. Um, and so I decided to sort of, or I sort of really just fell upon NFTs, which reignited my spark for photography again.
So going back, I want to hear more about the NFT journey, but going back, so you got into models, you got into fashion. What did you get like? How did you kind of like keep that going? Because I know like a lot of models, fashion photographers, like I did models for a while, like studio stuff,
Yep.
and everybody wants you to work for free. That's what I've noticed about that
And
industry.
and I did for many
Oh,
years.
and how did you
Yeah.
survive? Like, how did that work for you?
I was making my money doing hair. I
Okay.
knew at the time, yeah, I was one of the lucky ones, right? Like my living was coming from doing my hair. My connections in the modeling industry were because of my status in the hair industry. I was working with a lot of modeling agencies doing hair for models, for the agencies. I had a good relationship with them because I was working on set. And so all of these things were integral in terms of me, being able to source models for shoots. And then I was getting a lot of models approaching me, asking me to help them build their books. Some of our submissions were published in Playboy, GQ, and it sort of just grew. And I got some recognition just from, um, I guess you call it sheer willpower. The
Mhm.
ability to just keep working, keep submitting, get noticed, and grow from there. But I think that with my photography, and one of the things that's unique, and I think it's overlooked in this space, because I think, as you said, like a lot of people sort of come in and they have their side gig and they do what they do, and like NFTs and their art is I don't want to say it's a hustle or a hobby, because I think that undermines it, but I think that it's just part of what they do. For me, shooting and taking photographs and doing what I was doing, like I was doing it not because I was getting paid. I made no money from it. I was doing it because I strictly loved the art of creating it. Like I did envision one day having a gallery with my art on the walls and people, buying my photographs and it being viewed as art, because that was the intention behind it. It was creating, these moments, this sort of recreating what I grew up to in the 80s, which I always say was the golden age of photography. Recreating it for myself, like living through those days again, where imagery didn't have to have a political statement associated with. Like for the most part, when I create an image, it's not a political statement. It's just an image. I mean, people that view it like to associate it with a political statement, and whether that be, here or there, and that's fine, because I think that, people can get what they want from art. I think the art can be anything, but I don't. Most of the time, obviously, there's certain pieces I've done that are a statement, but overall, generally speaking, it was all just made for the actual enjoyment and intentionality of creating, beautiful things.
So I feel like nude photography, like and I'm just gonna be upfront, like, it's borderline, it's questionable, like, is it pornography? Is it, art? And it's hard to keep the defining line between tasteful nude
Yes.
photography and, obviously, crossing the line. And,
Yes.
um, yours is very tasteful.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, and I wanna know, like, how do you find a way to make it so, it's art, so it's tasteful and people don't misinterpret it? Because that I think that you have the ability, a very strong ability to be able to just make this, like, beautiful art out of nude bodies, which I think it's a very hard art form, and I wanna know, like, how did you approach this? How did you learn to craft it?
Thank you. Yeah. Um, I mean, to be fair, there's some people that don't find it tasteful, and I think that that's the thing with art is that, art is very subjective. Um, but to answer your question, I think that, specifically when creating nude art, I think what makes it tasteful is the approach that the person who not only is taking the photos has, but the subject in the photos has. When those um, when those ideas or philosophies align, you get a tasteful photograph. If you look, for example, at my Privé fine art nude collection, which I did, which was like a collection that I didn't use flash photography at all throughout. It was just really about light and shadows and how that sort of danced and bounced off the human, the female form rather. Um, that collection was really about intentionality as well. The subject understood the goal of the collection. The goal of the collection was to release a very tasteful fine art nude that people could collect, and you wouldn't look at it and think it's vulgar. So I think that the most important aspect is how you approach it. I mean, I'll be honest with you. If I wanted to shoot porn and go out and make porno videos and
I
pornography,
could.
yeah, it wouldn't be very hard. It would be a very simple feat. But it's much more difficult to create something that's tasteful and timeless. Some of my work has appeared in Playboy before, and even that work was, tasteful because Playboy had a shift as well on how they wanted to represent, the female form. And look, I think it's good, and I think that these discussions are good. I think that that's important because I've been called a misogynist today. I was called misogynistic today. I mean, it never ends. I get it daily, but
Yeah.
I think that you can certainly tell the difference between a misogynistic a photograph, and a misogynist that's taking the photos. I have
Yes.
nothing but respect for both the subjects that I shoot and the nature of my photography, and women in general. Like I said, like my mom and my sisters raised me, and I mean, anyone on the internet or otherwise can go ask them what type of a human being I am. And what matters to me is the people that know me, what they think of me, and they all know what kind of person I am. And so, yeah, I think what matters is the way a nude photograph is approached, what you're trying to achieve with it. It's super easy to make a photograph that's not tasteful.
Right.
That's just a nude for the sake of being a nude photograph. I think it's a completely different animal altogether to create something tasteful.
So you grew up as a hairstylist. Your intention never really was to create nude photography. So where did you kind of like pick up this? Like, did you look at other photography and say, like, this is kind of like where my style wants to go? Because you have a certain style.
Yes. Yeah, I think
And yeah, how'd you kind of craft that?
yeah, I think you know what? I mean, it's certainly influenced by the '80s. Um, Helmut Newton's, Mario Testino's, Ellen von Unwerth. I mean, she's a very important influence in some of my work. And if you look at their work, specifically Helmut Newton, and I think Ellen von Unwerth, like if you look at an Ellen von Unwerth on von Unwerth photograph, you see brazen, brazen nudity. It's brazen. It's in your face. It's out there. But you never look at it and say like, "Oh my god, like this is like why would she have shot this?" I mean, she does it in a way where you can appreciate what the intention is, and that's not to say that it's for everyone because
Mhm.
it isn't. But for the people that understand nude photography and for the people that collect that niche, and I made a post about this the other day, it's a niche within a niche because photography, as you know, is already a niche sort
Yep.
of collectible, let's call it. And so the nude art within that niche is even more difficult sort of thing to break into. And I think one of the reasons is, to allude to your point that you said earlier, is that there's a proliferation of porn, nudity, OnlyFans content, explicit content. I mean, anyone that's on X or Instagram, you don't even need to look for it. Like, you're bombarded by it. Um, and so I think that what happens is a fine and a tasteful nude gets lost in translation. Like, it's just lumped together with all of these. We see it with X, with the censorship, with the
Mhm.
algo. I mean, like, most of my photos never see the light of day. Like, I've had collectors message me and say they thought I left the space because, I'm just being suppressed. And so I think it all gets clumped together.
Yeah, you're like permanently shadow banned.
Exactly.
Um, so I, how do you, and I've always wondered this, how do you direct your subjects and not only not cross the line, but I'm assuming you do direct your subjects. They don't just naturally like because you're using your light to create these images.
Yes.
So how do you direct the subjects in a manner that you don't feel like you're crossing that line, that you feel like you're pushing your subject in the right direction, and how do they respond to that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. And to be honest with you, um, it's just let's call it a grade. There's a scale. Some subjects are just completely comfortable uh, behind the camera, or in front of the camera, I should say.
Mhm.
And I mean, those are definitely the ones that I obviously lean towards working with, because there's no sense in working with someone that is not comfortable in front of a camera. Like, if you're
Yeah.
not comfortable in front of a camera, then in my
Why make
type
it
of photography,
harder?
yeah, it's not going to work. I mean,
Right.
I'm actually not comfortable in front of a camera. Like, I photograph awful. I mean, just because,
Same.
yeah, it's not something I prefer, being on the other side.
Yep.
And so, but in terms of the ones that do need direction, it's good to understand that, again, I worked as a hairdresser for 22 years. So, and I worked predominantly with women. I mean, like, I had some male clients, but let's say 99% of them were women. And the reason for that was because, when I started, that's what I worked at. I worked at a women's hair salon. And,
Yeah.
and that's where the money was. Like, women were
Yeah.
getting color and highlights and balayage and haircuts. And if you wanted to make money, that's just what you had to do. And so
Totally.
I think that that helped me, right? I think that that rapport, I mean, because if you think about hairdressing, it's very intimate. I mean, you're there and you're touching people's heads, and then, you're getting to know about their families and their children, and, some of the heartbreak that they go through and some of the most joyous occasions. And you build this bond, you build this rapport. And so I
Yeah,
think
you're
that
like a
that
bartender.
absolutely, they say exactly, like, a hairdresser, a bartender, and a psychologist, they all have the same job. Um, so I think that that's a big part of it, is just, being comfortable and talking through it. And, there's been some behind the scenes, like, video of me shooting that I've shared in the past, and, like, pictures that look like they were so serious and like we were laughing throughout, but like, that doesn't, you don't get that in the finished product, right? So, like, what you see in the finished product and what sometimes people imagine is going on is very sometimes different. It's kind of like when you're watching a horror movie, right? Like, you're in that moment and
Mm.
you're like, oh my God, the serial killer is coming. But like, behind that camera, there's 300 people, someone's managing the lights, someone's feeding someone else a sandwich, someone's trying not to laugh. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a creative process, right? There's a process to it. And so I think that a lot of people who aren't familiar with it sort of invent their own ideas. But to answer your question, I think it's just because I have a rapport with women because of what I did for so many years.
Do you feel like you're directing like Kubrick, or do you kind of feel like you have like a relationship with them and you're kind of like, like guiding them?
Wow, that's a good question. Um, oh, I think it depends. I think it depends on the subject.
Yeah.
My fiance has been the subject. She was a model, so she's been the subject in quite a few of my photographs. So, the way I would direct her, and actually, like, I get more mad at her than I ever would at any other subject.
You so you feel like you can push her.
Your hand isn't right. Your hand. She,
Right.
she yells at me back. But no, I think that it depends on the subject, and I think everyone needs to be approached differently. And I think part of, like, what I learned as a hairdresser was that, you're going to have all sorts of people sit in your chair. You don't necessarily have too much control in terms of who sits in your chair. And so, like, it's up to you as a hairdresser to find an area where you connect, somehow. So, and I think that with photography, that's similar. I think you need to find somewhere where there's some sort of connection, where there's a middle ground, where there's some sort of, where you can meet, where two minds can meet. And it's in that area where two minds can meet when you're creating, where, in my opinion, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, I feel like that way, honestly, with landscapes. Like, you have to have a relationship. Like, you can't just, it's very rare where I just show up to a spot, take a picture, and get lucky and get that image. It's kind of like you have to keep going back, embrace the seasons, embrace the weather, understand the lighting. And then finally, you have that relationship and you've let it in your heart, and you can finally like get that shot. Is that kind of like similar? I mean, in a way,
Absolutely. And I would add to that like a respect. I'm sure you have a respect for nature.
great respect to go out there and I'll clean up the land while I shoot.
Bingo. I was just gonna say, like, you don't go to a shoot and like drink a beer and throw the can on the ground.
Right.
I can't imagine like someone that takes a good picture of a landscape would do that because they appreciate the nature. And so conversely, when people call me misogynist or whatever it is that they want to call me, I
Right.
mean, I'm taking pictures of something that I love and that I appreciate and that I respect. And so I treat it accordingly. And I think that anyone that's known me in real life, uh, can attest to that.
Yeah, I don't think I need to know you to be able to see through your art that you respect your subject. It's very obvious.
Thank you.
Yeah, it comes through with your work. Um, I want to know, so with once you picked up the fashion modeling photography, kind of like pursued that, most photographers can never figure out when to switch from working for free to charging their clients. And how did you like overcome that hurdle? How did you figure it out? How did you overcome the imposter syndrome saying, all right, now I can charge. I'm a photographer. I have the portfolio. I'm ready. I know it's like a loaded question, but it's like, how did you find that,
No,
moment where you're like, all right, I'm going to start charging people and here's what I'm going to do.
it's a good question. And the simple answer is that I never actually charged anyone. I shied away from shooting anything paid, editorials, campaigns. It was never something I was that interested in. I think there was a brief period of time where I thought perhaps I'd be interested in shooting editorial or advertising campaigns, but I actually never did that. And one of the reasons I never did that was because the thought of shooting something that I don't own, that isn't me, that I don't put my name on, that I don't like, that's the antithesis of what I do. It would be dishonest for me to ever do that. And so, without glorifying the starving artist sort of diatribe, because I think that that's absurd and I don't like it. Um, I was prepared to always shoot what I wanted to shoot, not make a cent from it, and move forward in life. The fact that I was able to monetize it and sell my work as art, amazing. And I'll never be ungrateful for that or downplay it. But the truth is that, I never really wanted to take paid work, even from agencies wanting to do like test shoots for models. I'd rather shoot a creative, shoot something creative that I enjoy shooting, that's me, as opposed to like putting a model against a studio light and shooting her this way and that way. And, left profile, right profile, chin up, chin down. It just doesn't speak to me. And so, yeah, I don't think I'm the best to ask in terms of how you get from shooting creatively and stuff that you love to getting paid for it, because I was fortunate enough to be able to monetize my work through tokenization, which is one of the reasons also that I believe in tokenization so much. Like, I am a diehard believer in the tokenization of specifically photography, because I think that the provenance that that offers is unmatched, even more so than any other art form.
I honestly could not agree more. I literally before we got on, I was actually talking to Danny Seedphrase, big, collector in the space.
Yeah.
We were chatting back and forth, and I said, photography, I think, is like one of the most like important art forms within the Web3 space because of the fact that it provides this provenance that we never really had the ability to have before. And he immediately responded, with authenticity. Like that's what gives you guys that upper hand, is that authenticity. And I think it's so true that we haven't really, because of the 2021 crazy hype bull run, and that was led by a pandemic, by a digital renaissance. I mean, there was so many factors that
The
played into that
perfect
run.
storm. Yeah.
Yeah, it was literally, there was no other, like the perfect fucking storm. So it's like when you think about what's going on right now in 2025, I think what we see is like the filtering out of many people who didn't believe in what they were doing and just kind of came in for the money to exploit the space, which, you know what, make your bag, do what you got to do. But there were people who I think have stuck around, that maybe even be coming back, that are starting to understand that it wasn't necessarily the NFT value, the money within NFTs, but the actual provenance, to be able to utilize, we can use this for not even like digital, but physical forms. When we sell prints, we can attach these to NFTs. Before, everything was done in-house. Most photographers, artists, everything's done on, their private server in-house. This is a public ledger, a public blockchain where everybody can see, access your certificate of authenticity, the tradability, the value. There's so many more things, so many more layers that we didn't really get to explore in 2021 because we were all just trying to capitalize on momentum. And now people finally are able to think, which actually brings me to my next point, because I want to learn how you got into NFTs, but I also, your drops have been, the mechanics have been absolutely just, insane. It's totally different than most mechanics. And before we get into how you got into NFTs, where did you come up with this concept? Because you didn't get paid for any of your fucking art in the beginning. You didn't get paid by any of your clients, which is, I get it. Like, you had your side gig, but then you come into NFTs and you're like, burn, redeem, buying my own supply, having conviction in my own work. Where did all this shit come from, man?
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Respect, by the way.
Thank you. I think conviction in who I am as a person, what I believe in, and my thoughts and my beliefs. First and foremost, I have to thank my mom and dad. I mean, my father's no longer here, but I have the utmost respect for my parents and the way they raised me. And I think that believing in myself was something that was sort of imposed on me at a young age. It was never about achieving material things. My dad wasn't a materialistic person by any means, although money was an important aspect of life, and it still is, obviously. Nothing in my house was ever money driven. Everything was always about sort of like, look, my dad used to say, he was Italian, so I always translate in English, but he used to say, like, look in the mirror, analyze yourself, and ask yourself if the person that you're looking at in the mirror, if you're happy with what you see. And that was a metaphorical sort of term for him, that I should analyze myself and self-reflect and, whether I was who I was and what I was doing in life, whether it was a correct path. And so I think that conviction comes from just these, always them telling me like, you can do it. If you put your mind to it, you can achieve the things that you want to achieve in life. In my darkest days, my dad would always say, it never gets darker than midnight, son. Don't worry, there's always light around the horizon. And so that conviction comes from just a deep rooted belief in myself, in my values, and in the traditions that I was taught. But in terms of like how that relates to NFTs, I saw an opportunity. I mean, I saw how things were going, and I understood sort of, I think, the way photography was going to play out. Um, that unfortunately, because of the influx and the amount of people that were entering and the supply that was being, minted daily, and by all means, don't take this as a scarcity sort of take, because I believe in abundance more than anything, but I understood that the market dynamics of it were not always be conducive to what was happening in 2021. And so in 2022, I said, how do I get around this? And it was the Moonbird mint that gave me the idea for Sicilian Kiss, because it was this, again, as we said, people coming in, controlling the narrative, profiting off of it, and essentially leaving. As I don't want to name names, but as we know, like Moonbird founders did, they made hundreds of millions of dollars, and then eventually, once there was nothing else to bleed, they exited the space. And so that mint was for me a chance to sort of not just demonstrate to myself, but give artists that were listening and paying attention at the time framework to get their name out there. Because let's face it, it was, I mean, it was impossible at a certain point, unless you were like the top 1% of the space. Even then, like getting heard or getting your name, getting your name seen or getting your work in front of the right eyes, it was impossible. So I said, how do I get people interested? How can I build this network of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 collectors that I feel that I need to take my work to the next level? And so that's when Sicilian Kiss was born. It was a counterculture idea that I should give my work away for free, specifically considering that, I was selling for double-digit ETH. I mean, my sales were some of the highest in terms of photography in the space at the time. So, I did something that was counterculture and counterintuitive, I guess you could. But I did see that if I could get enough people, because of the success of editions by Guido, these burn redeem mechanics, part of the success that, by the way, I don't think I would be able to replicate today. I think that this was specifically done, timed well, executed well, was a moment in time. Um, and part of the success was that I was able to get so many people out to mint, right? And it was 14,812 Sicilian kisses that minted. There's less than
Wow.
7,000 now, so there's less than half. I mean, it's 6,000 and change. So we've burnt half of the supply. Um, but that was a success, right? Was bringing that many people up, because what you did was you built a network.
Right.
For all this talk about network art, like for example, the memes by 6529, Sicilian Kiss was one of the first to sort of tap into that uh, at scale, because people had done burn redeem mechanics before. But I think it's fair to say Sicilian Kiss was the first to do it at scale and, achieve, what it did achieve and what it's still achieving.
Can you explain exactly what the mechanics were and how it started and what it is?
Yeah. So, Sicilian Kiss was essentially just the lips that were behind Saran wrap, and it was designed in a way where it had to be a simple poppy image, nothing too serious, something people could easily identify. There's some artistic meaning as well behind it. It was like, I'm part Sicilian, and the Sicilian kiss of death, meaning like people were going to see this on the timeline, people who hated me and were speaking out against me for whatever reason, and that the Saran wrap would suffocate their voices. They wouldn't be able to like project all of this garbage that they were projecting that was towards me. And so, that was the artistic meaning, but the more complex meaning was, give people an opportunity that can't afford my work. I didn't have editions at the time. I only had one edition, and it was Sending My Love. And I think that it was like, at one point, I mean, it was selling for like 1 or 2 or 3 ETH a piece, right? Edition of 225. And so a lot of people were priced out, and a lot of people were supporting me. It wasn't just the collectors that were spending, whatever it was that they were spending to collect my work. It was like all these people in the timeline cheering me on, the people sticking up and standing up for me and the right to create art and, the freedom of expression. And so it was this double, triple meaning instrument where I could give back to these people. I could then have these people as collectors and use them as, as a network. But the key to it was not promising anything. I didn't promise a single thing. I didn't say, and this is one of the big mistakes that people I think do today with the burn and redeem. It's like, oh, mint this and then you can burn, and mint this and then you can burn. Sicilian Kiss, it was no utility. If you can look, I have the original posts. There was no promises. I said, if you have faith and you believe in my art and what I do, and you hold on to it, down the road, your faith will be repaid and this and that. And, it was more symbolic and it was all in jest. Um, and so people really minted it at the time, just thinking that, they'd either hold it, or some people wanted to flip it. And I think that was the real sort of magic of it, was that nothing was promised. And then from there, there's been sets of burns and redeems. And now from the second token, I think we're at the 112th token. Almost, 99% of them are all burn to redeem mechanics. Like I've sold a few editions in that collection. Everything else I've done for free in lieu of royalties as well. So
It's brilliant. It seems like your strategy in life is under promise, over deliver.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
Depends who
It
you
seems like,
ask. I like to think so.
yeah, it seems like that. Um, what got you into NFTs? How did you find them? What sparked the light? Because it sounds so. You closed your hair salon during the pandemic.
Yeah, I walked away from it. I was working at a salon,
Okay,
and
working at a salon
yeah,
and walked during.
I obviously I couldn't work anymore, so I was
Right.
unemployed. I was taking care of my mom. I basically didn't really have a dollar to my name, to be honest with you. It's not something I'm embarrassed about. I was 41, and unfortunately, life throws you curveballs and things happen, and I
Yep.
found myself in that situation. And so I had a collection of sports cards and memorabilia that I was looking at liquidating to get some money. And so I started researching on the internet, what's the best way to get, the old hockey cards from the 80s and 90s, things I've saved for years. and I looked at it was late 2020. It was like December 2020, and that's when I started looking, researching, and I came across these NFTs, and
No
that's I
way.
started like reading about them. I was like, this is really interesting. I don't know what an NFT is. I understood what crypto was because when Bitcoin came out, I actually wanted to invest a few grand and buy like some Bitcoin because
Yeah.
I believed in the premise of crypto, right? It was my father that talked me out of it. And I think for good reason, like just being old school. And like my dad was like, what is this? Like internet space money? You're
Yeah.
gonna like, what are you
Who
doing?
could have predicted that this was going
No
to
one.
happen realistically?
Yeah, no one.
Like, yeah, very few people had the foresight.
And so, yeah, I just went down the rabbit hole. And the interesting thing, and I don't know if I've talked about this, but before I thought to myself of even tokenizing my art, I thought, it would be really cool, like an NFT grading service, like grade NFTs. And so I came up with this, like, I made this, I think it was called Hodl Grade or something. And I made a website and I came up with this system
I
of
love that.
like, it's funny now because now I'm looking at it, I was like, that's the stupidest thing ever because NFTs don't need to be graded because
Yeah, it's like
but
you're gonna grade an
what are you
NFT that
grading?
doesn't
Right?
like it doesn't depreciate, man.
It makes no
It's
sense.
not gonna fall apart.
No, it made no sense. But I'm happy I did it because like I submerged myself into the ecosystem trying to
Right.
get this business going. And then the whole time I realized, like, what am I doing? I'm an artist. I've made art, abstract art, collage. I've got photography.
Yeah.
What am I doing? Why don't
It's
I
time to make
try?
one. Yeah.
Right. And so, I started my first mint wasn't a photograph. It was like essentially a conceptual like collage piece that I did with like different assets. So like it was funny because it's so cliche now, but it's like a skull with an astronaut wearing like a spacesuit. Like
Just trying to fit in.
it was, yeah, I was like, what works here, right?
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Same.
but it was, I mean, shortly after then I just started really doing things that were my style, like what I was really all about.
Did you do it on OpenSea, your first mint?
That's a good question. No, I think my first mint that I never sold and then like I eventually burned what actually was a photograph, but it didn't sell. I think it was the name of the website. Was there a website called Mintify or Mintable or was that something?
Maybe.
I think there
Rarible,
was.
maybe? I was on Rarible the first
I
mint.
remember Rarible. I minted there too in the beginning, but this wasn't the first one. The first one it was like Mintify because they had lazy minting, which I
Oh,
think
okay.
at first I'm not sure when I first got into the space, or maybe my memory doesn't serve me correctly. I'm not sure if OpenSea did lazy minting always.
They I don't know
Did
if
they?
they did always. When I got in March, they were doing lazy minting.
Right. Yeah. I think if I'm not mistaken, I think that's when they started late February, March. They actually started the lazy minting. And I think it was to
Okay.
compete with whoever had minted at first, which would be like, I think in February, early February of 2021. But anyhow, that was a photograph, but I burned it because there was like no traction and I had no clue what I was doing.
Right.
Like I was just totally lost. It was, you were there in 2021.
Yeah.
I don't know, it was like you'd been dropped on another planet, you
Totally.
know?
Had you known any part of the community or anybody on Clubhouse? Nothing. You just went in,
Zero.
dope. That's crazy, bro.
Zero. I knew
Okay.
nobody. And it's interesting though, because again, my hairdressing kicked in, right? This ability to like build a relationship, which is what I did. Like I wasn't trying to sell my work. I was trying to get to know people and build relationships. And then like one of the earliest artists that I built a relationship with was Jack Kaido. And, we just sprung up a friendship. He's a dear friend of mine now, obviously. But yeah, it was just this being kind of like I say, like dropped on another planet or being dropped into the wilderness and like
Mhm.
fending for yourself. And then I realized that's when I said, like, you know what, like I think I could do something with my photography. I think I'm onto something. And then it just, I guess they say like the rest is history.
Yeah. So when you started like coming up with like the idea of like minting your first piece, um, like what? Because obviously the first one, you burned that, but what was like the next drop? Like, what did you go? Where did you go from there?
It's a good question. What did I mint from there? So I did a few of these like conceptual collage, which were like mixes of my photography um and different assets.
Mhm.
I actually still have one. I love it actually. It's called Inner Workings. I bought it back because I had minted that in 2021, uh, kind of early, April, May of 2021 on the other defunct. platform, Maker's Place. Yeah, which I really liked. It's too bad to see them go because I think that
I know.
they had put in an honest effort to try and help artists. But
They're a good
um,
team.
yeah, they're and nice people. Exactly, really, really
Yeah.
nice people. Um, and so then and that was like May, and then I think it was more like June, July, where it was there was an obvious interest in my photography. As people were messaging me saying like, "Hey, would you mint this photo or that photo?" And I was waiting. I'd put a bunch of minting off because I was trying to get onto super rare, and they were killing me. Getting on super rare was like, I don't know how hard it was for other people. I can't speak to other people's experiences, but I tried for like 8 months,
I
and
mean, dude, when I joined the space, they didn't have any photographers.
yeah, it was just like getting on there was like I may as well. I'm in no means like a runner, but I could have run like 20 marathons before I got into super rare. It was difficult.
Same.
And
Yeah.
that was sort of what I was waiting for. I was waiting for like, and the reason super rare was, because super rare had done a really good job at the time of capturing an audience, the
Hmm.
audience of the people who were serious, or at least we thought serious about collecting art and holding on to it and valuing it and understanding the provenance of it. And so it's when I got on super rare, which I think was September of 2021,
Okay.
that things just started, really snowballing.
Where did you find the collectors before that? Because I mean, were you just on like X, just kind of posting into the crypto Twitter void, or
Yelling into the abyss. Yeah,
yeah,
building relationships. Um, a lot of people said, like cold DMs don't work. I found that cold DMs did work for me. I think that what matters is the approach. Like
right?
again, I said I tried to build relationships. I don't just try and message people and be like, "Hey, can you buy this?" I mean, obviously, that's never going to work. You know,
Mhm.
99 times out of 100, it's never going to work. But I think once you build relationships with people and they realize that you don't just view them as dollars and cents, you know what I mean? As just as a bank or as an ATM. Once they realize that you value their opinion, who they are as human beings. Look, I've got collectors that I'm friendly with, that I interact with on a daily basis, that have still probably never collected one single piece from me. You know, am
Yeah,
I upset at them? Am I livid towards them? Am I sour towards them? No. I mean, art is like it's subjective. If
right.
I was creating something that everybody loved, then it would be a commodity and it wouldn't be art. The key for me is creating something that like, a handful of people love and a handful of people value more than anyone else. And that's the goal. The goal is to make it, something that the people who really appreciate it value it.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about like creating a network of collectors that want to support the art form and keeping it organic, which is, I think, like hard for most people because, and even myself, like I'll go to NFT events, like in which, like, as much as everyone says I'm not an introvert, I am 100%. Like, being in a public space with a shitload of people is really hard for me, which is why this is
I
like so
hate it.
much. It's
I hate
so
it as
hard.
well. I agree, man.
It's so hard. So you go to these events, and I know like we're artists, so we're supposed to be networking. We're supposed to be selling our art. We're supposed to be meeting collectors. Like that's what we're supposed to do. But it feels very transactional. And it's hard to overcome that feeling of like, I'm not trying to meet people to sell my art, but that's what I'm fucking here for.
Yeah.
So it's like that hard, like, how do you, how in your opinion, have you been able to just kind of like, find that balance? Because I feel like that's a very hard balance to find of like most people that do feel like that networking game is almost very transactional. And I know you seem to kind of like want to curate relationships.
Yeah. Web3 is really, as you said, like, unfortunately, this is a sort of dark side of Web3 is like it can get transactional really quick. It's
Mhm.
heavily financialized. And the very nature of the space in which we operate, which is mostly X and social media,
Yeah.
it tends to be an attention economy. And so what I see in Web3 is a lot of people who are incredibly gifted at making art. We have incredible artists, just like in the trad world. There's no gulf or shortage of quality. I think what happens though is that in the trad world, an artist can make art more or less and just make art. And,
Mhm.
they have a gallery maybe represent them, or an agent, and they're able to get by and sell, and God bless, and their life tends to be more simple, let's say. In Web3, it's a necessary evil. Like being on there and marketing yourself is necessary. I mean,
Mhm.
I can speak to my own experience because like I've got this perpetual shadow ban. If I'm not out messaging collectors, if I'm not out commenting, if I'm not active on X, poof, there it goes. It's all gone. I'm
Right.
invisible. People think I've left. People think I'm no longer creating. People think I'm no longer relevant. And I think that that's the hard part. I think that that's what most creators in the space struggle with. And I don't know if it's just because, social media isn't their strong suit. I hate social media, so I can totally relate. Or
Right.
if just building relationships is not something that they're comfortable with. But I saw it as a necessary evil. It's an unfortunate side of what we do, and I don't like it. To be honest with you, I despise it. The fact that I got to be out there marketing myself every day, but
Mhm.
100% of my income comes from my work as an artist, from tokenization. And so if I don't do it, then my mortgage and everything else that I have, maybe someone else can pay for me. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm forced to do it because I have to. It's a necessary evil. So
Um, do you feel as though that, not like takes away from your passion, but do you feel like would you rather be able to just create and not ever have to deal with that?
absolutely,
That
absolutely.
would be like the dream
I
situation, right?
Ideally I would just love to create what I create and not have to get on X and answer to people being called a misogynist, a sex pest. What have I been called lately? I've been called all sorts of good things. Like I mean, yeah, ideally I would love
I
to
see
go
you on the
on,
timeline. Yeah, I
yeah,
see you.
and not deal with these mentally deficients. I mean, like, that's not my idea of a good time. But this is a space in which I operate. Um, I do think it'll evolve, and I do think it'll
Right.
change. Unfortunately, I think we've taken a step or two back just because of, you know, um, I don't want to call it gatekeeping, but I think that we've sort of concentrated capital and power in a very, very small percentage of collectors and artists.
Mhm.
And I'm very familiar and I'm very, very comfortable with power laws, but I think that power laws doesn't do justice to explaining what we've created in Web3 right now. I think that we've taken a step back. So I think that in order to grow the market entirely, and even for those current 1% artists who are making ungodly amounts of money, and the collectors that have ungodly amounts of money, even for them to make more money, it's important for the entire ecosystem to grow. No market in the world, whether it be art, antiquities, uh, equities, or whatever, can grow if 1% of the capital is just concentrated on 1% of the overall participants, right?
Yeah.
And this is a part I think that a lot of people have trouble sort of understanding or grasping is that Web3 as a whole, and as we've discussed with network art, is a network. It's a giant network. So in order for this network to grow, we need more people involved in working. Eventually, what will happen if 1% of the capital is only allocated to 1% of the participants, the other 99% of the participants are going to F off.
Right.
They're going to fuck off. They're going to be like, they can do it for a year, 2 years, 3 years. No one's going to do this for 20 years without making any money.
No, drive them crazy.
Right. So, I mean, if at the end of the day, if the goal is at the end of the day to have 25 artists and 100 collectors collecting those 25 artists, then they're succeeding in what they want to do.
Mhm.
If the goal is to onboard the masses, like we always talk about, and bring back sort of, I don't want to say the speculation of 2021, but there was something else going on in 2021 that we don't talk about. And it was the possibilities. Like there was a possibility in the air, the possibilities for people like me and for you and for countless other people like us to actually have their work seen, networked, collected, and have some substance and earn
Mhm.
something that they deserve to earn. They're creating it. Of course they deserve to earn it, right? And
Mhm.
that's I think what sort of um we've sort of migrated away from. But I am hopeful and I think I see positive signs. I think that that'll come back. I'm just not sure when. I think that we're gonna have, unfortunately, another sustained period of NFTs are dead. And then what'll happen, I think that'll be the final shakeout for the people, unfortunately, that have not been able to make a go of it and that have, put in a lot of time trying to not just to hone their craft, but build their network. I think that they'll probably drop off. And I've seen it with the people I mean, I've collected thousands of pieces of art, and
Right.
I recognize almost none of those artists as being on the timeline anymore. You know,
Same.
and I'm not upset. I mean, I
Right.
collect art to keep it. 99% of the art I collect, I'm going to hold
Totally.
on to. I'll sell it if it's good for the artist and, good for myself. Like if it's an
Right.
amount of money where I'm like, okay, it's much more than what I paid, and this brings the artist some, fresh eyes and brings them to another level. But otherwise, I'll just hold on to it. But 99% of them, I think, I haven't seen them, I haven't heard from them, haven't seen them. I mean, have disappeared. And so, to that point I made earlier, for the network to grow, the network has to grow. It can't be 100 people and 25 artists. I mean, it's nonsense.
Right. Well, it's interesting because like it feels like it's kind of a value extraction in the sense that there's like a cabal that has chosen, this amount of artists and this circle of people, and whether you're in that cabal or not in that cabal, um, in some way you're still like responsible for somehow like pushing this ecosystem forward.
Yes.
And I want to know like what your thoughts on are and how do we like obviously there's no simple solution to this, but there is a solution and there is a way to fix this. Um, when collectors buy art, they're let's not call them collectors, let's call them investors. Investors buy art, they want to make money off of it, they want to flip it, they want to make more money. And then there's some guys who are like making money off meme coins and then they come buy art, know that they're never going to make any money off that art. It might be 10 years, 20 years, or maybe never, but they're just there to support the artists. And then there's like some people who are just like buying art because, they believe that long term it will value them. There's so many different like
Right.
facets of like, yeah, different collectors. Um, if you're in it, and I think like a majority of people are in it to make the flip, to make some money out of it, how how do you get away from those, cabal, 100 artists and start spreading that wealth? And I'm not talking like communism, like spread the wealth of like we all need to, share our money here, but yeah, how do we get around this? Like, and I'm not saying like teach collectors or anything, but there's got to be a solution to where everybody in the space, and I'm not saying like WAGMI rise together,
Right.
but right, like there has to be a way to get away from just this cabal chosen Medici era style gatekeeping and control the narrative where even small, because like you said, people entered in 2021 because there was a fucking possibility. Now it does not feel like there's even close to a possibility. If you show up in 2025 as a new artist, unless you have some crazy niche art that no one's ever seen, it's or a really, really crazy fucking story. It's pretty hard to get up to the top ranking. So it's like, how do we fix that so we don't end up right where we were before in traditional art?
Right. Amazing question. I think the shortest answer, the most simple answer, and something that I've said is the lowest hanging fruit uh, in our entire market is onboarding more collectors. I mean, that's the most simple. The simple answer is that, you know, I'm making up a number. We have 10,000 artists. We have 100, or let's call them 1,000 investors. We need 10,000 collectors. We need 100,000 collectors. We need 500,000 collectors.
Hmm.
This is the most simple. The most simple answer to your question is that onboard. And I just posted. Let me read this post
Yeah,
because
please.
I just posted about this, I think, minutes ago or an hour ago maybe. And this is the post I wrote. The problem that no one has put 100% of their resources and efforts into with regards to tokenized art, onboarding new collectors. This is the final boss and unlock of a 2 to 20 times market size. And I stand by those words 100% because I think that,
Great post.
yeah, I think that that's the part that a lot of us are sort of glossing over. And we have artists, myself, you, countless others buying art from artists. We have collectors buying art from artists. We have investors buying art from artists. We have artists buying art from collectors. We have this closed group of
Hmm.
people that we're all just sort of passing money from one person to
Just
another.
burning gas.
Yeah, we're just burning gas. I mean, right? Like there is no liquidity. There is no extra liquidity. I mean, I
Right.
can count on one hand the amount of new collectors that I've talked to since, I don't know, 2022, like,
Right.
literally. And so I think that no one has solved for this. And I think that, rodeo or rodeo, I don't know how it's pronounced. I never participated in that, but I watched from the sidelines. And
So
this isn't to knock, I'm all for people trying different things, but
yeah,
I think that they were trying to sort of approach that and solve for it. I just don't think that, giving people an opportunity to buy something of any value for 25 cents or whatever it is the way. And nor do I think like a Zora creator coin is the way.
right.
I don't, excuse me, it's not for me. It might be for other people. I don't knock people for trying things because God knows I've tried everything. I
No,
tried
it's the
fucking,
beginning of dialogue. It's
yeah,
it's starting something. It's experimenting, but it's not the way.
exactly. And so I think that the most simple and for whatever reason, the most elusive is onboarding new collectors. And I think one of the reasons is, you know, someone that's serious about collect. I'm not talking about investors and flippers. I mean, investors and flippers, I think, will find a way to come into the space because if they're that financially driven, they'll figure out a MetaMask wallet and self custody and crypto in no time, and they'll get on it, right?
Yep.
But I think a collector that approaches this from a different perspective, as you talked about, someone that says, I want to collect the art, I want to hold it for 5, 10, 20, however many years.
Right.
I think that they're not the kind of people to want to fumble with a MetaMask and buy crypto, and for whatever reason, and I don't think that we should look down on that. I don't think that we
No,
should sort of segregate them and say, oh, well, they're not crypto native, they can't. No, I think that if they enjoy art and they want to collect art, I think that there should be easy solutions for them to do so. And I
totally.
think that certain platforms might be making it easier, like people can buy with a credit card, and then I guess it's not self-custodied. I think it'd be custodied by whatever platform. But I think that stuff like that is helpful. But how effective it's been, I don't know. I don't know anyone that's like, really onboarded a group of collectors that operate in the space. And then the other is, sorry, going back to what we talked about before, but the other part of it is, you know, if they're collecting and maybe they're collecting anonymously or quietly, and maybe they're not even on X.
Yeah.
And so then that's another question is like for, someone in Web3 that has to market themselves and connect with collectors to get sales. Like, how do we connect to this, this collector base that don't care about X and dealing with like all the drama and everything else that goes on there? And it's a fascinating question. And I obviously don't have the answer, but I do think that the lowest hanging fruit is that we need to onboard people because we can't, we can't operate in this walled garden where I'm like, here, John, it's $10 and you give me 15 back and then I give 20 to someone else. And like,
Right.
that's not, that's not sustainable for, 10 or 15 or 20 years down the road.
No, it's transferring wealth back and forth. I mean,
Exactly.
that's basically all it's doing. And even like I tried like a couple weeks ago to buy a Mooncat with a credit card because I'm going that much into debt over crypto that like 150% of my wealth is in crypto, just like
Yeah.
God help me.
Yeah.
Where I'm buying NFTs with
Better
fucking
pump. Yeah.
with fucking credit cards. That's where I'm at in life. So I tried and it did not work. And man,
Right.
I spent like a lot of time like trying to figure. I'm like, dude, I really want to sweep Mooncats, and I got this American Express. Like, come on, let's go.
Yeah. Let's do it. Let's make it
Right.
happen.
And like I could not do it for the life of me. And it's like, dude, I know people at MoonPay. Like, let's make it's like it's very complicated. But I think like right now with legislation, clarity, everything with our administration, pushing for crypto and more clarity with it. I think with regulation happening, we're going to see obviously much more ability to be able to buy with credit cards. I know MoonPay is working on it with all, they're like the leaders right now and like
Yeah.
how to onboard masses, like, and get like people who don't understand crypto into crypto without even realizing they're using crypto.
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
that's like the most important thing. It's like we used to talk about will people still call it an NFT 10 years from now? And I don't think they will because we don't call music MP3s anymore.
I
And we all
agree.
lived through that, right?
Yeah, I agree. There's been even the NFT word, there's been like fierce debate as to like, what are we doing here, right? Like I use the word NFT because it's so ingrained in me, but really it's to me it's digital art, it's
Yep.
tokenized art. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's art that's been tokenized. And I think that yeah, even the terms that we use definitely are helpful in terms of attracting these people who, as you said, like want to buy Mooncat with a credit card and can't.
Right.
That's the stuff that needs to change. I mean, it's not helpful that we have these barriers. And this is the part that frustrates me, right? Is like we are an industry. It's called an industry. We are an industry almost entirely driven by technology.
Yeah.
and we cannot make for a simple wallet interface. We cannot make for a simple credit card transaction. We cannot onboard someone who likes something and can go through and in 10 seconds click and own it. I mean, to me, that's low hanging fruit. That's how you onboard the next mass of people.
And I
And
think
until, you know, until
that's
we
how
do that,
we're so early. We're still Napster, man.
I
We're
know it's crazy.
yeah,
I
we're
mean, in
so early.
2021, we used to say, and we used to think like, in 2, 3 years, but we still are
No,
plagued by the same problems because they haven't solved for these things.
right. And I think it's like the biggest hurdle is obviously like regulation. Credit cards are not going to allow you to buy crypto. A MasterCard is not just going to approve, a transaction where the degenerate's like, I want to spend $10,000 on this squiggly line. But listen, it's by Snowfro. So it's like
Right.
no credit card. So I think we're going to get to a point where we're not even going to call it digital art. It'll just be art. And the reason
Yeah.
I say that is because like we don't call it digital music. We just stream off of Spotify. We don't call it anything else but hey, let me pull up Spotify and listen to this, stream this podcast. I think what's going to happen is, and I think we're almost there because I was in Dubai, like looking at monitors and screens, what they have now. And Amir in a Mondor gallery,
Yeah,
he's
of
got these
course.
screens, dude, that are, in my opinion, I get as close as I can and they're almost fucking indistinguishable between my
Wow.
acrylic prints and this screen. And I have no idea what this cost, Amir, but dude, it is so dead on. The pixels, everything is so clear that I was getting like inches away and still couldn't see the pixelation.
Wow.
So that being said, when we're at a point which we know it's inevitable, where screens will be indistinguishable between HD acrylic prints, whatever you're printing with, and you'll probably even be able to choose your substrate on the screen, we won't even probably collect, well, we will, but not as much physical art, like how we collect vinyl records. We'll have a handful of them, but the majority of our shit will be on these screens throughout our homes.
I agree with that. And I had envisioned a while back more of a technology like a projector where you could, project different on even a wall, right? I
Right.
don't know what the quality of that would be, but to your point, I agree. I think that what's going to happen is like people are just going to collect, and it's just going to be art, and quite possibly, I don't know this part, but quite possibly the whole crypto aspect of it might just happen in the back end where people may or may not even
Yep.
they may or may not even know that it's tokenized art,
When they're buying art on their screen at home and, wealthy people who are just stoned, drunk or whatever, just like, yo, I'm going to buy this $1 million piece right now.
Exactly.
Check this and tweet about it and then put it
Exactly.
on TikTok. Look what I just bought on this digital screen. Then the ball starts rolling.
Exactly. I don't know that like the average person needs to like know or care about the price of ETH or BTC if they see a piece of art that they like and in US dollars they can afford it.
Yep.
I don't know that they need to know that it's whatever X amount in ETH or in BTC or excuse me, whatever it is. I think that's part of the unlock as well, is like making it mindless, to
Totally.
your point.
Well, it's Keith Grossman who wrote that article a while back. None of us know how our toilets work.
Ain't that the truth? Keith's a smart guy. He's
Right?
he's heading up MoonPay now, isn't he, Keith?
Yep.
Yeah,
He's the president of MoonPay running pretty
yeah.
much
So
everything.
we,
Yeah.
we've got one of us in the ranks, and I'm sure he's going to do a good job.
Yeah, he's doing a great job. And I feel like that's the type of mentality we need where you don't realize using it because everyone, like not everyone, but most normies are looking at crypto. They saw what happened at 21. They look at it as like a Ponzi scheme. Anytime that I talk to my friends about crypto, they're like, oh, wait until it crashes.
Yeah,
Like that was when Bitcoin was at like 40K and then
yeah,
70. And they're like, well, it'll crash in October and we'll see you, in January when you're broke again.
yeah.
And it just continues to move up because they don't really see the potential. They don't understand. They haven't even read it. They don't even know what the white paper is. So they have no interest. And I think that's honestly 99.99% of the world. They have no interest in self-sovereignty and nothing wrong with that. I mean,
It
there is a
might
lot
even
actually.
it might
There's a lot.
even be it might even be better for them because if they're not, if they're not up to date with like self custody, as we can, as we've
Right.
seen so many,
They'll
I
just get
don't want to
wrecked and
point out
scammed.
the bored apes that have been drained, but I mean, it's the
But
going meme.
majority of people want to collect their paycheck. They want to pay their taxes. They don't
Yeah,
even know where it goes. They don't even care where it goes. They just want to they know that this is how much they have to live on. They get that every week and they're comfy. They're comfortable. They feel secure. They're happy. They go to their bank. They put their money in. Why would they have any interest in self custody, owning their own money, investing in Ponzi
it's
schemes?
called the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid.
I like that. Yeah, right.
Sicilian kiss. There you go. I mean, we all it all ties into each other.
It's a
It's
full
true though.
circle,
It's
but it's
true.
true. It's most people don't really wish for that self-sovereignty. So you're 100% right when we say we have to bake it into the layers where people don't even realize when they go to Starbucks and they're not even realizing that they were using the Polygon, blockchain on their reward
Right.
system. That's what we need more of.
Yes, I agree. And I actually think that that will do that will do something else as well, not just onboard the masses, but I think if that were the case and people were collecting in like US dollars and the crypto stuff was happening in the back end, I think you would see a decoupling of art and NFTs, and the way they're priced when ETH goes up and down. Like, the moment ETH goes up, people start dumping NFTs. I think we
Right.
would see some sort of decoupling of that if people were just collecting the US dollar terms and the crypto stuff was happening in the background. I think that would be, to be honest with you, healthier, just generally speaking, forming a less speculative industry. Which I
Well,
think, by the way, nothing wrong with speculation, but I think that when something becomes overly speculative, then
mhm.
we get bubbles, and we know how bubbles end.
Yep. We always know they just burst eventually.
Exactly.
That being said, though, like moving into photography with having these layers built in where you can just buy digitized art, you can put them on your screen. Um, where does that where does that put photography? Where does that put generative art? Where does that put digital? Like, where do you think we fit in on that?
That's a great question. Where do we fit in specifically from a photography perspective?
Yeah, just because we've always been laughed at, man. We weren't cool until iPhone showed up and Instagram showed up. Before that, we were kind of the nerdy kid who showed up and took pictures for the school newspaper.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Like every
mean,
movie you see, we were the dorks. So where do we fit in now?
photography, I think traditionally has always been the underdog, right?
Totally.
I think that it's interesting because, everything that we value uh from a technological perspective as a society, social media and advertising and television and you know it's all very much built on photography, on images, right? The things that we buy, the
Yep.
stuff that we're consuming now from influencers online, social media, Facebook, Instagram, X, is
Yep.
all based on photography. And so, it's something that I've talked about in the past as well. Like, it's ironic that, for example, a JPEG collector collecting NFTs, we call him a JPEG collector, says to me, "Oh, I don't collect photography." Well, like, sir, JPEGs stands for Joint Photography Experts Group. The JPEG was invented for photography. Without the JPEG, you would not be collecting NFTs or digital anything, And so I think that it's just ironic in that, photography is responsible for so much, but for whatever reason is still very much overlooked. And I think part of that is, look, everyone's got a camera, a phone in their pocket, right? And so
Right.
everyone's a photographer.
Yep.
And it's the reason that I say, like in my bio on X, it says like, taking the shots that you could have taken, but you didn't. And I mean, it's playful banter because that's the point of it, is to get people to think like, yeah, anyone can take a photo, but what separates, a piece of art from the millions of like social media photos, and are some of those social media photos good enough for art? Sure, they are, if someone wants to take the initiative and turn it into art.
What
Um,
does separate them, real quick?
I
A
think
good photo.
intentionality, like what we talked about before, what's the intention behind it? You
Yeah.
know, is the intention to provoke, to evoke? Is it just let the viewer draw inference on, for themselves? Um, I think that the connection, again, that the person creating, the photographer, the person standing behind the camera, has with what's in front of the camera, whether that
Yeah.
be a beautiful mountain, whether that be an ox, the way we saw Jay shoot the other day, that relationship.
Beautiful.
I've seen pictures of birds and boobs and butts and cars. So, Dave Krugerman's pictures of cars, right?
Yep.
That connection, like, people just think like a connection has to be between, like, humans,
Mm.
and that's not. I don't think that that's. I think at least in the most raw sense, is you can tell when there's a connection from the person standing behind the camera and what's on the other side of it. And that's why, you know, Dave Krugman can sell a picture of a car the way he does, and you can sell a landscape the way you do, and Cass Samard can sell a beautiful mountain scenery the way she does, and Jay can sell that picture of the ox, and I'm able to sell just a set of legs with a bottle of wine on the table. I think that that comes through in the final, in the finished product.
So When we're talking about like, photography being digital native for the blockchain essentially, because like, I mean, most images are now digital. Most people aren't using film anymore. And it seems like it's more common now to
Yeah,
use
I don't
digital,
use
right?
film, haven't used film in years.
Exactly, because it's just easier, it's cheaper, it's like, yeah. So it's like everything's digitally native when we're shooting. And on top of that, when you think about like a painting that's been put on the blockchain, most likely someone took a picture of that painting to put it on the blockchain to get
Yes.
it up there. So
It's
it's
a
like photography,
photograph. It's a
right?
photograph they're collecting.
It's like fucking photography is literally everywhere. It is more prevalent than any other art form when you really think about it, when you break it down. So it's like, yes, it's the underdog because maybe it's a newer art form in the sense of like it's been around for like, 150 years or so, where painting's been around since like caves, since like
Right. Yeah.
Neanderthalic days. So it's like, I understand the idea that it's like newer, but then I think about, well, then generative art is even newer. And like digital art is even newer. And like we keep even going. It's like PFPs. Well, that's even fucking newer. So it's like, are we poised right now, being this 200-year-old art form, to finally be in the light? Like, is this our moment? Is this our final boss, our end boss? Is the blockchain where we finally end up and finally get our value and moment?
Man, I hope so. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know the answer, but I hope so. I mean, I think that I think there's another interesting aspect to this in that photography, maybe generative art as well, but I think more so photography sort of replicates the blockchain in an artistic manner, um, in the best possible way. Meaning, like, when you take a photograph of something in the real world, you're
Hmm.
documenting it at that very moment, in at that very time, in that very place. And essentially that's what the blockchain does, right? The blockchain is a public ledger of sorts. It's saying,
Right.
like, this was minted on this date, and this is the block, and this is the hash, or whatever it is. And I think that photography does that. And so I'm unsure where the disconnect is. I think one of the reasons is probably because there's so much photography, and people think that abundance means that it's not valuable, that there's less value to it. But I think that that's a very kind of strange way to look at things, because abundance means that it's so important, right?
Hmm.
Like, we have an abundance of air, and that we breathe, and without it, we're royally fucked. I mean, there's an abundance of a lot of things on earth that we have, thankfully, that keep us here. And without it, and I think that creatively and technologically speaking, I think photography is, there's an abundance of it, and rightfully so. It's helped build the very things that we're using to create this digital renaissance. Without it, we'd be screwed. The JPEG is invented because of photography. And so, I don't know if this is our moment, but I sure hope it is. I think that what we need, though, are people willing to dig deep, and, like, we need big sales. Unfortunately, like, it was a $69 million Beeple sale that, was part of the spark that started the bull run for NFTs. I think that, I'm not saying we need a $60 million sale, but we need bigger sales, and we need to bring photography, um,
Headlines.
to the top, right? Again,
Yeah.
and right now we just don't have that, outside of, like, a few notable sales, like maybe Justin and a couple others. Um, we don't have a group of people right now that know how to properly value photographs, and I can see in the conversations I've had in private, with some people as well. They just don't understand the medium. They don't understand how to value it. They don't understand how to look at it, how to interpret it. And it goes for any genre. It doesn't just go for, like, my particular genre. Although I do believe that, like, my particular genre is even more difficult. I think it's even more of a niche, because I think someone would be more apt to hang, like, a beautiful photo of some scenery, or, like, a landscape, than they would, a girl with her jeans pulled down, and, like, a tattoo on her back or something. So I think that, it's very niche. But, you know, I certainly hope that we're at, some sort of crossroads in terms of bringing photography to the next level. But I think it's going to take some help. I think we need the collectors who are, um, who have enough conviction in their own, you know, process and thesis of taste making to invest, because everything that's worth having takes investment. It takes people who are willing to say, okay, I'll invest X amount. Even my work. I mean, I didn't get to where I was just because of my hard work. I got there because there were certain people, when I sold poolside, there was a collector that said, you know what? it's worth what I want it to be worth. I'm going to hold on to it because it's meaningful to me. And
Right.
he bought it and he held on to it. And I think that that sort of patronage is important for us to take it where we would both like to see, photography go.
It's funny though, the abundance argument, where we could say that abundance doesn't have value, but look at TikTok. What are you talking? It's like there are billions, trillions of videos on YouTube. It's one of the most profitable companies.
Absolutely.
There are trillions of videos on TikTok. It's becoming one of the most popular and profitable media companies.
Absolutely.
So abundance and scarcity, I think like that's like, it's definitely a mindset. I feel like that's more of an investor mindset as opposed to a collector mindset, where it's like you could mint so much art, but if there's one collection that connects with a group of people, none of your floor values or anything matters prior to that. And it's funny because like we were so concerned about our Genesis piece in the very beginning of like what the first mint was, right? Like, so, and now you look back and it's like, oh, that there was no reason to be worried.
No,
Eh,
no. And
Abundance.
I would say that, these discussions and I think abundance and scarcity, I think they have their place in the argument. I think that they have, relevance in certain ways, but we were so shaped in 2021 and 2022 to people that are long gone now that were purely investors that really, again, to what we're talking about, controlled the narrative, right? Really formed these theses, these ideas. And some of them were funds. Some of them are not even art collectors. I mean,
Mhm.
if we met them in real life, we may be hard pressed to see a piece of art hanging on their fucking wall.
Right.
They were talking about supply control and how much the previous sold for. And I mean, these are people that are talking about things like financial instruments. And yes, they have a place in our ecosystem, but I
Yes.
absolutely 100% stand behind this statement. I don't think that they should control the narrative,
No.
because if they control the narrative, where we're headed is exactly where I think we could be, where 1% of the capital allocation or excuse me, 1%, 99% of the capital allocation is concentrated on like smaller than 1% of the participants. And that makes no sense and will never grow. Will never grow. I mean, from the outside, it'll look like a joke. Um, you know, there's artists that have achieved so much and sell for so much, and I'm happy for them. I hope to achieve that one day myself, because I never look at things from an envious lens. I look at things as like a wow, look at what's possible type of perspective, right? Because that's
Right.
always helped me in my personal growth. I think that comparison is the thief of joy. But looking at it just from a health perspective of the market, you know, we can't just have 5 or 10 people getting 99% of the funds. I mean, we're eventually those funds are going to dry up, right? Unless the people that are collecting have an amount of money that's never ending, which I don't think they do. Eventually, we're going to see some sort of capitulation, if you will. And I don't know if that capitulation will be the entire space or it'll be just certain, genres or certain artists, but it can't continue on. We need to grow in every region. We need the emerging artists to have achieve more success. We need established artists to achieve more success. We do need the superstars to continue selling because they bring more eyes and more publicity to the entire space. A healthy ecosystem. It all needs to grow. It's just like any society. You can't have just the ultra wealthy and then the impoverished, because when you have the ultra wealthy and the impoverished and not very many of the middle class, we know what happens in societies, right? They collapse. There's revolution, and so you know hopefully we sort of figure that out, because there needs to be, speaking about abundance, there needs to be abundance for everyone, not just in what the amount that we're creating, but enough that the market continues to operate in the ways that it should, and we don't see the people like Foundation shutting their doors, or Maker's Place shutting their doors, or I mean, at one point, I think that there was a genuine fear that Super Rare may shut their doors. Like, I think that
Mhm.
that was a very viable fear, and I'm happy that they didn't. Because they certainly gave me my start. But I think that for these things to continue functioning in a way that's efficient and capital efficient, I think we need to see more, a little bit more. I don't want to say equality, because I'm a capitalist at heart. I don't believe in like communism or
Yep.
or taking from the rich to give to the poor. Like, that's not what I'm getting at. But I think the more common sense, a collector that's more nuanced, that's wanting to collect something because they like it, not because, the 99 collectors that have the most capital have told them that that's where they need to allocate their funds.
Yeah, you're not preaching wealth distribution. You're basically just saying it doesn't have to be cabaled.
Absolutely. And, I'll speak about cabals for a second, because like,
Love
there's
it.
a lot
Let's do it.
there's a lot of people that I respect on the timeline saying there's no cabal that exists. I'll tell you, and I'll speak with them openly, the cabal exists. I've
Of
seen
course.
messages, I've seen chats, I've seen the way things work, I've had private discussions. If we think that there's a group of people in our space that haven't positioned themselves to be in power and don't have the capital means to control the narrative, then I've got a bridge to sell them, because
Yep.
they have. And these are
They
not
have.
power laws. We're talking about every new participant that enters the space, all collect the exact same things. Now,
This isn't some conspiracy theory.
this isn't a conspiracy. Now,
It's just a matter of fact.
a matter of fact. Now, let's say, would a percentage of them who are on X, who are reading through X posts and looking for things to collect, now, would a percentage of them gravitate towards what's popular and selling for a lot? Yes, a percentage of them would. Absolutely.
Yes.
That's common sense.
Of course.
Would every single one of them collect the exact same people and use the exact same terminology? Grails, vaulted, running out of time. I mean, if we want to have the discussion, anyone in the space that considers themselves a thought leader, that's brokering deals for millions of dollars, that shows up in the space and pretends that they want to behave in good faith, I'm here, I'm open, I'm willing to go on a podcast, Spotify, whatever you want to do, and put my name and my integrity on the line and have those discussions. Frankly, I don't think anyone will take me up on the offer, because being someone that has sold for a lot of money myself, I can certainly tell you that a cabal exists. They're alive and they're healthy. They may not operate in the way that a lot of the conspiracy theorists in the space think they do. I don't think that they have meetings and sit around a
Right.
round table and say, I don't think
Sacrifice a
I don't
goat.
think it's shadowy, but they certainly do dictate the narrative. I mean, it's evident, and it's obvious. I think you insult people's intelligence when you say that it doesn't exist. I think that that's an insult to anyone who has, a couple IQ to rub together.
Well, I think it's simple and it's inherent, because the facts are is that if you start a group chat with a couple of friends and then you guys start buying shit together, you've
Yes.
cabaled. Whether you like, I mean, it's not, look, I'm not going to say that all cabals are evil, because they're
No.
not. There are, like there's groups of us photographers that are in group chats and we buy each other's art, and someone could say, well, you guys are caballing.
Absolutely. I think
So-
I think humans fall towards systems, right? Like, I think
Totally.
we organize ourselves into systems. And so I think to a certain degree, it's natural. What
Mhm.
I think is unnatural is for the people with the most influence and the most money, who, in my opinion, have a responsibility to grow the space,
Mhm.
see it only as an opportunity for them to profit.
Yep. And we know exactly who those people are.
Exactly. And we can say that a lot of us were here before those people arrived. And it's out in the open, and people can see it. It happens every day. I mean, we see it on the timeline. And I think Phantom Scribs does a great job of kind of poking fun at it all. He's always dropping like memes and like, kind of fun takes
He
about
makes me
it.
laugh.
Yeah, he makes me laugh. But I think a lot of his critique on the space, I think, are on the money. He makes
What
fun
about
of a
that
lot of what we do.
787 guy, I think it is?
That's another one. FK 787. I think 787 as
Bro,
well has
He
sort
makes me
of,
laugh.
he can sometimes be right on the pulse of what's happening. But I think that, these people making these observations are not doing so and inventing things. I mean, you've
No.
seen it, I've seen it. We've been here since 2021. I have no reason to invent it. I've been at the beneficial end of power laws.
Mhm.
That's how I made my success in the space, if you will, other than sheer determination and hard work. But
Dude, when there's millions of dollars, there's going to be people there to try to get it.
absolutely. But I think that where we should draw the line is like when these people converge on any new collector and really just push the same thing over and over and over. I mean, they're doing themselves a disservice. They're doing that collector a disservice. They're doing the entire space a disservice.
Totally.
And mostly they're doing art a disservice. And if they're operating in the space as someone who's a patron of the arts, I would expect more.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like there's something to be said about kind of like if you can't find a seat at the table, you need to create your own table. And I know that's like hard to do, but it's like you need, like we said, like we were just saying, cabal. You need to cabal with your friends. You need to get together with your group of friends and create your own table because if the narrative is already being set by other people, then you have to create your own narrative. And by that, I mean, I wish more people would do like people would reach out to me and say, "Hey, do you mind if I do, a photo room?" Fucking please do photo Fridays, do photo rooms, do spaces. When you could go on the timeline and you couldn't go anywhere without seeing a photographer holding a space, those were the days.
They
And it's
were.
like,
There would be
right?
like
And it's like,
dozens of them,
dude,
dozens.
dozens of photographers, and everybody used to say, man, the photography community, like you guys are an army, you're always holding spaces. We need to bring that mentality back where like putting out reports, doing photo reports, hosting a podcast, building websites, whatever the fuck you can do that you're capable of doing, talking about photography, pitching it on the timeline, because the more we continue to discuss it and bring it up, the more prevalent it's going to be and the more we control the narrative where it doesn't matter. Like what I thought about the other day was that if we got all the photographers together, right? All of them, like let's just say 100, or I know there's like 1,000, but let's just say 100. I guarantee with all of our followers put together, we have like 50 million followers.
Yeah,
With
it's a
all
big
of our
network.
followers,
It's a
right?
powerful
We have a
network.
huge fucking network, and we're letting collectors with 50,000, 15,000, 20,000 followers control the fucking narrative. That's insanity to
It's
me.
sad. It's sad, but I think it all comes back to like this capital allocation, right? It's just like there's so much money concentrated in such a small area. And it, unfortunately, for people who are really trying to break in and like get the sales, like that's the area. Those are the people that they're trying to sort of break into. Like to your point, right? Like you're never going to get a seat at their table. They've made up
Never.
their minds in terms of who they're collecting and who,
Yep.
who
They're
they
out of seats, man.
yeah, and who they're loyal to the most. Like you can see them on the timeline. Like they won't sell that art for like a WETH offer, like a low
Yep.
offer. Meanwhile, I have like collector after collector like selling my stuff for like the cost of a burger. Like, you're never gonna get a seat at that table. It's
Never.
important to develop your own network and to swear. And that's why I have to say, like, I have a lot of respect for people like you, and Justin is doing like moments in the unknown. Like you guys are doing a lot of hard work and the gritty work, which is keeping photography at the forefront. So, like I respect you and I thank you for doing stuff like this because it's super important. Like this is the grass level, organic stuff that if we don't have, it does slowly die. Like we become prehistoric, we become a dinosaur and like just, fade away into the existence.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as like there is like another side of it's like a selfish reason why I'm doing this because I want to also sell my art.
Right,
But
of
in
course.
order for me to sell
And
my
there's
art,
nothing wrong with that.
there needs to be a fucking market. I can't just
Exactly.
sell my art and just be the only one
In,
selling art, and
into thin air. Yeah.
it just doesn't work. So it's like we all have to work together to create that market. We're not in competition with each other. If you don't like somebody in the timeline, reach out to them, hold a podcast with them,
Get
talk
to
to them.
get to know them perhaps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you might find out that you have much more in common with them than you ever thought because you're just reading their fucking tweets.
Yeah.
Take a moment to get to know them, and you might find out, oh shit, we have a lot more in common. We should build together.
Yeah.
And
It's hard.
the
It's
more
hard
we
to get
do
to.
this,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, the more we do this, the more we're going to build together.
100%. It's hard to get to know people on the timeline. One sec, I'm gonna let you see Beans. Beans, come here.
Let's see. Oh, I love this. I love this dog. So
There she
cute.
is. Hey,
So cute.
she's my baby.
Beans. I love the name too.
Well, okay, no kisses on the lips. What are you doing?
How old?
Say hi.
How old's Beans?
She's 8.
Oh, sweet girl.
She's the love of my life. She's such a sweetheart. She's been my savior. Honest to God, man. I can't
get
tell
it.
you what she's guided me through in life. She's been I love her. She's like my daughter. I don't have kids. She's like my daughter. I treat her like gold as she deserves to be treated. Okay, go. Go get some
Like,
treats or
I
something.
started my photography with my dog, right?
No, I didn't know that, but I saw pictures of your dog hanging out by the pool, and those cracked me up. That was awesome. Amazing.
Those, yeah. So I started like 15, 18 years ago, whatever, with my dog. Like I was working at a car dealership, dude,
Cool.
selling cars.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Used cars. And I'm sitting there with my dog selling cars. And I'm just like one day, like, yeah, I'm making $100,000 a year, but for what? I'm
But
not
this ain't life.
happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here 16 hours a day. This is no life for my dog to grow up. So walked into my boss's office, quit that day, bought a car, bought a camera, and just started traveling with my dog.
God bless, man. I love to
Dude,
hear
he saved
that.
my life.
God bless. Dogs,
would've been
I mean, they're like They're
I'd be
incredible.
there now.
Yeah.
I'd probably own the dealership now and just be
Yeah.
hating my life.
And miserable.
Hating my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said. Like the universe, I feel like guides us towards where we need to go. I mean, it seems like
It
the universe
can.
guides you towards the token. Dude, you were looking for fucking to sell your hockey and baseball cards and you
Yeah.
discovered NFTs.
That's how desperate I was. I mean, I
What
was
are the odds
desperate.
though? Like, what are the odds of that happening? And by the way, the timing, that
Yeah.
timing was impeccable.
I mean, if I'd come any later, like I wouldn't have seen the success I did because I'd like really put the
2022,
groundwork in.
fucked.
No,
Never would have
screwed.
happened.
Yeah.
So crazy. And because you had such a niche photography, you had this personality that believed in yourself. You were essentially the perfect storm for your situation.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I mean, the stars align. And like, to your point about the universe, like I'm a spiritual, I believe in God, but I'm more spiritual. Like I believe that, you know, the universe, God gives us signs, gives us opportunities, right? But
Mhm.
and I think that everyone to a degree is given opportunities and given signs. I think people though where things are different is how we accept or absorb those messages from the universe. You know, sometimes things just happen and you have to be open-minded to it. You can't be, narrowly focused. And like there's been plenty of times in my life now where I look back in hindsight and I had plenty of opportunities that amounted to nothing because I was too focused on different things. And so to your point, like the stars aligned, I was unemployed, I was home, it was COVID, I was going nowhere because I took
Yeah.
taking care of my mom really seriously. Like I get honest with you, for like a year straight, I went nowhere. I was like me, beans, and my mom. That was it. And so yeah, everything lined up and it was just like, lightning struck and
But if you think
I
about it,
was
man,
lucky.
you were a hairdresser. You weren't intending to become a photographer, but
Yeah.
the universe had different, different choices for you.
Different ideas for me. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Because it's like, I highly doubt that at any point when you were cutting hair, you're like, one day, man, I'm going to make the Sicilian kiss and make this crazy mechanical,
No, I had
fucking
no idea. I mean, how could you even
gamified.
yeah, how could you even imagine that? I wouldn't even be able I wouldn't have been able to dream it up. Like just crazy. They say fact is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, it's crazy where this little world of, and even of hairstyling, man, it's art. It's crazy where
It
art
is.
eventually leads us.
It is, yeah. Yeah, the
Yeah.
creativity and the artistic aspect of it, and that's something I've always sort of leaned towards is being a creative individual and, creating like for myself, like I said to you in the beginning, everything that I've created is like because I take pride in it. Or I enjoy doing it. I enjoy the process of making it, the finished product, how it's interpreted after, being
Right.
able to just look at it and say like, wow, I made that. So
Yeah. It sounds so like, I feel like it sounds so crass to say like, I make art for myself, but there's
there's
no other, if everybody died on the planet tomorrow, you think I'm just going to stop making art?
no, like you'd have to do something, right? It's about, look, like back to what I was saying about, for some people, it's something that they do, it's just part of their life. But for others, it's like it's a vocation, right? Like it's a calling. Like I don't think, I think like I would imagine like most priests or nuns become a priest or a nun because they've had some sort of calling, like there's a higher vocation. I've spoken to some, I've been
Yeah.
friends with some, like well, I used to do a priest's hair and we used to talk all the time. And like he told me that, you know, in his teens, he just had this higher calling. Like he felt like it was like something that he had to do and he wanted to, and he enjoyed it, enjoyed being a priest. And I think that with art, it's the same thing. It's like if it's your calling, if it's your vocation and it's what you do, then you need to, you need to explore that. I think it's healthy to explore it, right?
Yeah.
And not just like you don't have to just be a photographer. Like I've made gen art collections, generative art. I mess around with AI. I've done collage. I've done abstract. Like I'm a photographer. I've done hair. I mean, I'm a creative. Like I like to create. I like to create beautiful things.
Well, there's a dedication to creating. It's kind of like you just said, like a priest or a nun or like even a rabbi. It's like the amount of work and dedication that it becomes to, like Hasidic rabbi that sends, follows like 700 different laws,
It's crazy. The
right?
dedication is next
It's
next level.
it's next level. So like when you look at a creative, it is almost that same level of dedication because although we hate to glorify and romance the idea of being a starving artist, that is the facts that nobody gets into art and is like, I'm going to make some money.
Yeah,
Like
no.
this is where
It's
this is where I belong.
it's the wrong place to get into to make money.
There's
You're
just,
much better off in finance if you want to make money than making art.
right. There's like a handful of people that got into art to make money and they came in 2021 and they're gone.
Yeah, and they made some money.
Right, and
And
they made some money,
and
and
they are
that's it.
gone. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like when you want to be an artist, you have to accept the idea that you may never ever sell anything. And knowing that, do you still want to keep creating and call yourself an artist?
Yeah, and I think that that's right there. I think you've done a great job of sort of delineating what a real and what a true artist is. A lot of people create because they just have to. It's not about what they can get or what they look. I mean, I've been creating, my sales have not been stellar lately. I'm still creating. Like my whole Editions by Guido collection, which is now like, I'm proud to say it's one of the most successful photography collections. That is a labor of love. Like I don't make money off of that collection. Like people like, I get nasty DMs from people saying like I should be spending all this money. I'm like, so what? Like, I mean, number one, they don't know anything about my financial situation, but
Right.
I was like, have you looked at that collection? Have you seen how many editions I've sold? Because like, I'm not selling them. I'm actually giving them away for free. And on top of that, I've spent like 20, 30, 40 E buying them back.
Yeah,
Things
you're
I gave
buying
away
your shit
for
back.
free.
It's so crazy. I see you on the timeline buying your own art back.
Yeah,
That
I'm
dude,
constantly doing it because I
if
believe
there's,
in what I'm creating long term, like
I
10,
was about to say,
15, 20 years. I believe in it.
if there's no bigger sign of conviction than a dude who buys his art back that he gave away for free.
Yeah, then there's nothing. If people don't see that as, a sign of authenticity or belief in what I do, then
You're
nothing. I'll
crazy.
never be able to convert them. I mean,
Like that could be a mansion for beans.
yeah, it could be. I could have paid my mom's mortgage off, like
It,
I probably should have, but anyhow, it's a story for another day.
nah, I respect what you're doing because you have conviction in your work. You believe in it. It is very hard for me to buy my work back in the sense that it's just like I sold this to a collection. I don't feel like I should have to buy it back. Like I respect the like
Thank you.
the economics that you've created,
Yeah.
man. It's
Thank you,
no,
man.
it's brilliant, man. Um, dude, Guido, I want to let you go. I know you're busy. We've been on here for like an hour and 40
It's
minutes, dude.
been it's been great chatting with you, John. I really, really appreciate you asking me to come on and chat with you. We've spoken before on spaces and stuff, but
Yeah.
like this is more intimate and it's on the next level, and I have a deeper appreciation for everything you do. I
Well,
really
to be
can't
honest,
thank you enough.
yeah, man, I've always respected like your takes in the timeline because even though like maybe I don't agree with some or whatever, you're authentic. You don't give a fuck. Like
Thank you.
you come across like, look, I have to put this out there. I don't care what you think because the facts are is that this is how I feel. And you have to respect that because in art, if you don't have authenticity, then you're just kind of like you're just strolling along living someone else's dream.
I agree with you. Thank you.
And
Yeah.
if, so it's like, dude, I respect your drops. I respect like your art form.
Thank
So
you.
man, yeah, dude, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here. Where can people find you if they haven't ever heard of you or they're just listening to this podcast?
Yeah, I mean, X is the best place to connect with me and to stay up to date with what I'm doing in terms of everything Web3. I mean, uh, that is my situation room. So that's where I operate from. I've deleted my Discord because it was just again like dead weight, and I didn't
Good.
need it. And I think that
Yep.
I want to concentrate on what made me successful to begin with, which was like grassroots, talking to people one on one, this kind of stuff. This is what it's all about for me.
Yeah,
So yeah,
Discord's hard, man, especially for artists because you're just catering to a bunch of degenerates, man.
yeah, it's like there was nothing happening in my Discord which was of any substance.
I
And it's
get it,
like
man.
if
It's
you're
like
looking
when
for
Lambo.
yeah, if you're looking for an update as to like the next burn redeem or like it's all on X. So,
Just sign up for alerts on my Twitter.
bingo, sign up for alerts. You won't miss anything, and you get to interact with me. So that's the best places on X. It's at Guido Di Salle, GuidoDisalle. That's my handle. And
Do you have
that
a website?
I do. It's guidodisalle.com. Yeah, you can reach out to me via email on the website, but X is by far the best place to actually connect with me on a daily basis. I have Instagram. I don't really use it. It's kind of like, I
Same.
don't know. I'm
It's
torn
there.
with Instagram. It's there. I have it just because I have it, but
We're
it's
old school, bro.
yeah, you know what? They've made a fortune off the back of creators' backs, and I feel like they've
Hmm.
never really given back at all to creators, unless you
Couldn't
want
agree
to
more.
like, be an influencer, which is not, that's not what I want to do. I want to just,
Or get rewarded with thumbs up.
yeah, that's not my modus operandi. So, John, thank you, man. Again, I just want to say I have a deep respect for you and everything that you do. I've always known you to be a cordial, fair, upstanding individual in the space, and I think that you do a great job of representing what Web3 and what photography is really about. I think that you've really embodied all of that, and so thank you
Dude,
for being
thank
you,
you.
man.
Dude, thank you. Means a lot. Let's do this again. This has been fun. We have to do it again.
Appreciate it,
Thanks,
man.
brother.
You got it. Ciao.